The purpose of this bracing sequence is so that you can become better acquainted with how your body is carrying itself through space. I say how your body is carrying itself through space because we're not often very mindful of how we are holding our posture. So what this bracing sequence will do is it will get you connected with segmented areas of your body and give you insight to any muscle imbalances that you might have, tight, nagging, painful areas that you experience on a daily basis. Because most of the muscle imbalances, back pain, tight neck, come about because of our lifestyle. And so this bracing sequence can be very valuable to use to practice on a daily basis, even practice many times during the day until these things, proper body positions become more habitual and we establish the strength necessary to keep our bodies in that position. It can be really helpful to get us connected to those areas that we need to work on. And so the bracing sequence that I'm going to show you in just a minute starts from your feet and goes all the way up to your head, and you're able to kind of hone in on certain areas of the body, segmented units of your body, working your way up your kinetic chain in order to put these segmented areas of your body in a optimal position. And so let's jump into the bracing sequence real quick. Okay, so for the bracing sequence, we are going to start at the feet because that is our foundation. It's where we make contact with the ground. So in order to establish a braced posture in space, you want to make sure that your toes are pointed forward, that your feet are at about hip width for the sake of this bracing sequence, and that your weight is evenly distributed with the feet. I want you to think about what we've been doing with the squatting technique and the hinging technique and the lunging technique, where you're creating a tripod foot, where you're maintaining connection at points from your fifth metatarsal, your first metatarsal, and back here on your heel. So you want to establish your base there, and then you're going to come up and think about your pelvis position here. There are a couple ways that you can go about finding what your neutral pelvis is. And one of those, I'm going to stand this way, one of those is by putting your hands on your hips, just so you can kind of feel this out, bringing yourself into a full anterior pelvic tilt where your pelvis is tilting this way. You're getting a big arch in your lower back. So that's a full anterior pelvic rotation. And then you're going to bring it back into a posterior pelvic rotation or posterior pelvic tilt, and then come into the middle. But one of the main things that is going to set your pelvis in its neutral position is by squeezing the glutes. So you can play around with that positioning here, but you want to be able to squeeze the glutes and get your pelvis set. And so that's going to set your pelvis in your neutral. And now you can't exactly walk around with your glutes contracted all day because you'll look like an idiot. But what you want to do is once you get the glutes contracted here, you're going to move towards your abdomen now. So glutes are going to set the pelvis. Your core is going to keep the pelvis in its position. So squeeze the glutes, get the pelvis into position, and then you are going to think about shortening the distance between your lower rib and your hip bone. Just by drawing down a little bit, you can exhale as you do that. And then you're going to maintain that tension. And now your glutes have set the pelvis, and your core is going to keep the pelvis in position. Because you want to think about your pelvis and your rib cage as two bowls that are stacked on each other, that are connected with your spine. Now, if I've got a bowl down here and a bowl up here, and I come into too much anterior or forward pelvic tilt, I'm going to have some spill over here, right? Spill over from this bowl. If I come here, bowl's gonna spill this way, water's gonna spill this way up the top. You wanna make sure that you're keeping those bowls filled with a liquid, stacked and braced. You don't want any spillage. So when you are in a position now to keep the pelvis where was set by the glutes, you're going to move up to the shoulders. Shoulder position is a big player in neck tension, neck tightness, headaches. So we want to make sure that the shoulders are in a good position. So while keeping the core braced, you're going to move to the shoulders. Life brings us this way, right? Texting, sitting at our computers, writing at a table. We're constantly coming forward with the shoulders. And so these muscles kind of get stuck in shortened, tight, weak positions, and we come this way. So we want to practice bringing the shoulders back, and a common cue here is bring your shoulder blades back and down. So you want to come back with the shoulders, and then lock the scapula, your shoulder blades into place, and you want to maintain a position there. Now, when I say bring your shoulder blades back and down, I don't want you to come and give yourself a big elevated rib cage here. I call it rib boobs. You don't want to poke your ribs out. So I'm saying bring your shoulder blades back and down while maintaining that braced position up front, okay? Where your rib is kind of pinned down to your hip bone. So once you've got that in place, your shoulders in place, now we're gonna move to the head. So if your shoulders are forward, your head's probably coming forward too. Your SCM, your sternocleidomastoid, this big muscle that comes down here is probably gonna be overly tight. Head's gonna be coming forward, so we wanna make sure that we're resetting the head in a neutral position. So a good way to think about doing this is just give yourself a double chin. So from this forward head position, you want to come here, okay? It's not necessarily looking up, bringing yourself into cervical extension. It's more so coming back, okay? Tucking the chin just a little bit. So that is the last little checkpoint in this bracing sequence. Again, you want to start from the floor, start with the feet, toes pointed forward, feet at about hip width, moving up, set the pelvis with the glutes, play around with that full anterior tilt, posterior pelvic tilt, and then find your neutral, set it with a good glute contraction, brace here to keep that pelvis in position, shoulder blades back and down, and then neck into position. And you want to practice this. Obviously, throughout the day, you're not going to be able to focus on these movements because we can't focus on two things at once. So the more and more you're able to kind of remember and bring yourself into this position, the better, the more habitual it comes. And then the work that you're doing with resistance training and other exercises is just going to bolster your ability to be able to maintain and stay in these optimal body positions. So, and this, I should say that, this bracing sequence is done from a standing position. However, you can get yourself into a braced position, get yourself set, and then go sit down. And the idea remains the same. You want to maintain an upright braced posture even when you're sitting down at work or whatever you're doing. And that way you can carry yourself through space, through life, in good alignment for you, in your best alignment, and feel better.